All right. Well, hey, thank you for joining us today. Welcome to one of the first Wowza Support webinars. My name is Justin Miller, and we are here to talk about Wowza Streaming Engine. This is the Wowza Streaming Engine 201 webinar, where we get a little more in-depth in things involving Wowza Streaming Engine. Before we get started, I am going to launch this poll right here. We do love polls and would love you to answer the questions in this poll. We would definitely appreciate it if you do so. We will also be answering questions during this webinar, but not all the way through. We're going to hold the questions until the end. So you're welcome to type into the Q&A window your questions, and someone will answer them during the webinar. But if it's a question that you definitely want answered at the end by panelists, please let us know and we'll make sure that that happens. I'm going to leave the poll running for just a little longer to make sure people can answer the questions in the poll. Also, the chat window will not be available at this time. The chat window is going to only be used by us to send you links if you need them, say to information in our community forum or in our help documentation, but all Q&A should be done through the Q&A window. In fact, if you could, please go ahead and type into the Q&A window where you're from, just to make sure that it's working and everything is going well for you. Also, we always love to know where you're from. That being said, let's take a look at what is on our agenda. So beyond this intro, you're going to be learning how to quickly access Wowza support resources, including the portal for managing cases, our new FAQ guide, and the status page. We're going to go through best practices for creating and managing your Wowza Streaming Engine live streaming application. And some of the common troubleshooting issues that we're going to be focusing on are how to tune for performance, Java heap and memory usage, CPU HT threads, how to remove unused packetizers, and network buffering recommendations. And once again, while we will be answering via text any Q&A questions that are coming in, we are going to save most of them for the end. We're going to allow about 15-20 minutes for the end, so don't worry, we'll definitely try to get to you. And hello, Anne-Marie from Austria. Glad to have you here. It must be late, or is that early? I never know time. Time. Can anybody else tell me, is that late or early in Austria right now? Later, right? Much later? No? Rob?
I think it's later. I think it's later.
Yeah, later.
Much later.
Okay, she says it's 7 p.m. Yeah, that's late. Well, glad to have you here. Michael from Atlanta, Georgia, glad to have you here as well. I can see David. David, all right, California, using an EC2 Wowza instance. Awesome, glad to hear it. We got someone from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Awesome. Germany, Romania. Wow, everybody is all over. Well, glad to hear it. Well, I would like to introduce you all to our great panelists here. I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves. So take it away, Rob.
Thanks so much, Justin, and thanks all for joining today. My name is Rob Poach. I'm the VP of Global Service Delivery here at Wowza, and just can't say enough how appreciative we are of your time and joining us here today.
Absolutely. And I'm Matt Hill. Glad you guys could join us. And, usually support's kind of behind the curtain a little bit. So getting some faces, hopefully with some of your tickets will be beneficial, along with all the tips and tricks. I am the Senior Manager of Service Delivery here, and excited to share this time with you guys.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Tickler, Technical Support Supervisor, and excited about this call.
Everybody, I'm Rose Power. I'm the Senior Developer Community Manager, and you may have interacted with me in the forums or in the public Slack, and I'm happy to be here today.
Hey everybody, Alex Chipornoy. I'm a support engineer, and I do your tickets when you submit them.
And we are glad you do that, Alex. So Rob, Mac, Jason, Rose, Alex, thank you all for being here and helping out. And to Clint out there, I really want to know about your 1,000 traffic cameras. But before we get into that, let's get into this self-service overview. Rob, please.
Thanks so much, Justin. And yeah, as Max said, right, putting some faces to names here on some of the common individuals that you may be interacting with when you work with Wowza was a big reason why we put this together. Obviously, we'll jump into the more advanced engine tuning aspect of this webinar. But before we get there, we do want to highlight some of the self-service tools that we've put in place over the course of the last year. This webinar and a lot of this information comes directly from you, our customers, in the form of our feedback surveys, right? So if you recall, if you submit a ticket with Wowza, typically you'll receive a "Hey, how'd we do?" survey. And resounding feedback usually is on, I'd love to get more self-service tools available to me, right? I love more information available to me real time. And so we've really taken that information and tried to apply it into a real world example here of how you can utilize Wowza tool sets to get you from 0 to 1 that much quicker. So wowza.com/support is your primary support hub. Here, you'll find a number of links to our resources, right? Our newly added frequently asked questions, support articles, our forums, which Rose oversees, placing a support ticket, test players, and some other resources as well. So wowza.com/support, and these links will be in the comments section as well during the webinar and after the fact. The customer portal, which you can access by my account on wowza.com, is also a great repository of self-service tool sets and information. From here, you can update your credit card information as needed. From a support perspective, you can obviously open up a support ticket based off whatever products or subscriptions you have. But more recently, we've added the ability for you to update and interact with your open support tickets or view your previously closed ones all from the portal. So we've taken the approach of email only and actually made it into the portal. So now you can manage your tickets and your experience with Wowza Support, customer service, et cetera, much more seamlessly. We've also updated our Wowza Streaming Engine repository as well. So we made it much easier to find the latest production release, which I believe we just released one yesterday. So this is now up here. And then if you need to access, for whatever reason, older software versions, we've made that much easier as well, all through this portal in the My Account section of the website. The community, phenomenal resource for really everything. I mean, this tool goes back years in terms of history. So you're able to look up legacy Wowza, newer Wowza. It's a great tool to interact with fellow Wowza customers and supporters. And obviously Rose is heavily involved here, but there's also Wowza support staff that contributes to this portal on a regular basis as well. The FAQ, which we just launched about 2 months ago. This is truly a product of you as the customer's feedback. We've looked at all the support tickets, all the customer service tickets that we received over time, trended out the most common requests or questions, and then have been updating the FAQ portal with those questions and answers. It's a great resource that we're continuing to evolve and add to on a weekly basis. And so you can access things from customer service best practices and frequently asked questions, and then more product specific information can be found just based off the product you're looking for, right? So if you click on engine, keeping it in theme with this webinar, here is the most recent engine FAQs. And like I said, we're building this week over week. So bear with us as we add more content, but this has proven to be a great resource for customers as well. Our documentation portal, tried and true. This is updated regularly with every new release, every new feature set. You can see we have some new ones since I've been here last. Another great resource to find product information on all of Wowza products and services. Another tool set that you may not be too familiar with is actually in our blogs section. So it's the video category under resources. And there's 80 in there now, and there's a lot of good content on getting started, how-tos, implementing certain feature sets within the product catalog, and one that not many people know about. So I figured I wanted to show this here as well as a resource to consider as well. And then last but not least, our status page, right? So in the event something goes wrong, something goes down, our teams are diligent to keep you as our customers updated to this. We've set this up so that you can subscribe to the products that are most relevant to you, right? So it's not a subscribe to all and get all the alerts. Not that we have a lot of system outages, but when they do, we do want you to be aware of them. So for example, if you're an engine only customer, you can subscribe to just the engine updates, and it'll alert you anytime there are any service impacting issues with this product. So that was the very, very high level overview of some of the self-service tools, but you can access all of these through the hover links here, right? So support, FAQ, forums, under resources, blogs, videos, test players. It's all available through wowza.com. And of course, any questions, you can always feel free to contact us. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Rose, who is going to go through some live streaming and event best practices to ensure your success. So with that, Rose, please take it away.
Yeah, so this is a quick checklist for the video publishers to review before you have an event to make sure that your viewers have a really positive streaming experience. So first up is Wi-Fi. We definitely recommend that you avoid using Wi-Fi just because it can be so unpredictable. We've had a lot of customers that have tested their event the day or two before and it was fine, everything's great. And then something happens during the event, that there's a storm, the network is congested, and then you suddenly have a lot of issues. So we strongly recommend that you use a hardwired connection instead. If you have to use Wi-Fi and you absolutely can't avoid it, make sure as close as possible to the router, make sure the router is in good condition. Still, a plan B, you might want to have that Ethernet cable close by. Buffering is something that you can control from the publisher side. Sometimes it is the viewer's fault if they're in a bad area for their network conditions, but what you can control is making sure you have sufficient bandwidth. That is the #1 cause of buffering in a video. And I can tell you that viewers are extremely intolerant of a video buffering. The recent data shows that I think it's an average of 40% of viewers will click away from your stream if your video buffers more than just once. And it can happen really often during ads. So you want to make sure that you have at least 2 times the bandwidth of what your broadcast bitrate is. If you're going to be streaming at a higher resolution, say 4K, you may even want to go with 2.5 times just to be on the safe side. Pay very close attention to those ads. Test before your event, test on as many devices as possible because a lot of people will be watching from their mobile phone, and that's where you can run into trouble with those ads. So check the bit rates, make sure it's a seamless transition from the video to the ad and back to the stream. If you start to experience some troubles during your stream, you can check the bit rate. Sort of an emergency fix is you can reduce that. It may be too much for your network to handle. But just keep that in the back of your mind that you can quickly adjust that to reduce the chances of the video buffering. You always want to make sure you're on the most recent version of the graphics card because that actually has a significant impact on the quality of your stream. They're always releasing newer, faster graphics cards. So before your event, just make sure you're not using a really outdated version for that. Clearing the cache is super important. It clears up the memory. It can get rid of some potentially corrupted files that you have in there, and that can slow things down. So buffering is just really huge area for you to pay close attention to, not just because it can be catastrophic for the viewer, but if you have companies paying you to play an ad and the ad buffered and people left the stream, that can have significant impact on your relationship with the person that's paying you to play those ads. So follow those tips for buffering and pay close attention to that. Scaling is really important. You know, it's great if you have more viewers join your stream than expected, but a CDN, the content delivery network, can really come in handy because it can quickly accommodate a large spike in viewership. If you have a lot of viewers joining from around the world, it's really helpful too because the CDN can cache the content closest to the viewer, no matter where they're connecting from around the globe, and it can just result in a lower latency stream. If you're streaming through a streaming cloud, it's already built upon a CDN, so it'll automatically scale for you. But if you're using Streaming Engine, just keep that in mind that you might want to have the CDN added to your Engine account. Also, if you're not going to be using CDN and you're running from a single server, you want to make sure that you are aware of how much your server can handle. This is so important to test before an event. You want to know how many streams you can handle at one time before it's too much of an overload on your server. It can crash. So we always recommend that you run a test on JMeter. and just be aware what you can handle, but more importantly, be aware of what you can't handle. So the takeaway from all this is test as much as possible before the event. If you do need more bandwidth, make sure you reach out to your internet service provider beforehand. Don't wait until like the day before or anything like that, but you just want to avoid as many issues as possible so your viewers have a really good streaming experience.
Great, Rose. Thank you so much. And for all those in attendance today, and for those who watch the recording, we can't stress these key points enough. You'd be surprised how many tickets we receive in, where customers are just frustrated or have felt as if their event has failed because some of these things well within your control, haven't been checked off. And so, great resource. And thank you so much, Rose.
And Rose,
With that,
just one question. I'm sorry, Rob.
No, go ahead.
Somebody did ask which cache you're referring to when you're talking about to avoid buffering.
Your browser cache.
Your browser cache. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Excellent. And so with that, we're going to move on to Jason Tukler, who will be doing a live demonstration on how to tune for performance within Wowza Streaming Engine.
Hello again, everyone. One moment to share my screen. All right. Well, so to have your Wowza server run for optimal performance, we highly recommend tuning. It does not matter if you're running on the VM, cloud, or bare metal instance, it's all the same. I've already posted some guides you can review afterwards. It will help tune your Wowza server. So I'm going to go over the basics, and we'll start with our show and tell. So what I did is I created a text document on 4 areas that we should be focusing on, and these will make a big difference on how your Wowza server performs. So we'll start at number 1, application level. What playback types do I want? So we'll go Wowza Streaming Engine Manager, our application, edit, playback types. So I got to think, what playback types am I going to need? Because I could have multiple incoming streams. Wowza is going to transmux to all the playback types that I have selected, and it's going to fill up memory. But if I don't need that, might as well not use them. So we'll just pretend I just need HLS playback. Just select HLS, save, restart the application. Now I will only have HLS go into memory. Just make sure that you do that for all your application types.
So Jason, can I jump in real quick?
Yes.
So just to clarify, so we know Clint, for example, has said he's got 1,000 IP cameras or traffic cams. So if he didn't change anything and let's say all 1,000 cameras, that's too much, but let's say he has 200 cameras coming into one server. If he doesn't do this adjustment, what could happen?
He's going to have his heap memory fill up to high levels. And so by selecting just one, you would just say there's 4 available there. You're going to have a quarter of the heap memory used. So you're going to have a 75% savings.
So we're just getting rid of waste. Yes. We're just shaving back what's actually needed and actually making room for more cameras in some respects. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks for sharing that.
And also to note that we had Wowza Streaming Engine 4.8.12 come out yesterday, and that's an updater or installer, and that will allow you to do this the same as a manager, because we made changes for Adobe HDS and Microsoft Smooth to not be available within the manager, but now it's not available within the XML as well, because it's not a big need. And so we decided to remove it from the product. So we got step 1 done. So we'll check that off. Let's put it at X. We're going to go to step 2. What is my total system memory? Well, if you don't know, that's okay, because we'll recognize that for you. So with my system, I have 32 gigs of memory. I'm going to jot that down. Then I'm going to go to Java settings, edit. And so I have 32 gigs of memory, and Wowza uses Java programming language, which is going to sit into Java heap memory as needed. You got a lot more going on, you probably need some more Java heap available. We'll recycle it as needed, although it's good to have a good balance of heap memory versus system memory. So roughly about a third of your system memory. So I have 32 gigs. We'll go with 10 gigs. That's close enough to a third. So we'll go custom level. It's in megabytes, so it'll be 10,000, which equals 10 gigs. And you'll see here too, where it has garbage collector settings. We recommend the G1 garbage collector. It cleans out the Java heap memory as needed at a good pace. So we'll stick with that. Save. Normally we'll restart Wowza Streaming Engine when we make a change, but we're gonna make a few changes, so we won't restart it right away. So we got that done. So we'll check that off. There we go, step 2 done. So what is my total CPU cores? Just as well, we can go performance tuning. I got 12 processor cores. We'll write that down. And then we'll go server thread pools, edit, and there's handler thread pools and transport thread pools. Handler is handling data within CPU, and transport is transported data over TCP, so incoming streams and outgoing streams. If you do not give a good ratio of threads based on your cores, you run the potential of blocking CPU threads. And it's really common to do that. So if you have 48 cores and you're tuned for 12, you're not getting your full bang for your buck with your CPU core. So the ratio is 60 for handler threads. So I have 12 CPU cores times 60 gives me 720. For transport threads, it's times 40. So 12 times 40. Gives me 480 threads.
Cool. So Jason, just a couple quick questions on this. So we know sometimes we have customers come through with just beasts, and they've got like 60 plus cores.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is going to be required, but are there any gotchas or concerns of going that high? Is there any concerns with limits or anything like that?
Yeah, no, and I hear you on that. So 60 cores is probably okay, but maybe if you get to like 96 cores and above, you're sort of like overshooting with the server, and you're better off breaking that off. It just, we know it's better performance when you, instead of having like a super beast server, is to start thinking about scaling, because you'll get better performance, because you're just putting way too much pressure on the CPU cores.
Good. And just to be clear too, we're not talking anything about GPU here. This is completely CPU, nothing GPU related.
This is a CPU tuning.
Excellent.
And so this will get the most bang for your buck with the amount of CPUs you have on your server. It asks us to restart. We're not going to do that yet because we got more steps to do. But we'll mark that off as done. So now we'll move to step 4. So something to think about is, do I have a bit of incoming streams? For example, IP cameras, it could be RTMP broadcasters such as OBS, FFmpeg, you name it. They have a bit of incoming streams, and networks that I don't have control over. And if you do, then you got to think about, they could have a lot of network throttling, they could have really poor networks. And what happens is it will start backing up these buffers on your server, and that fills up heap memory. And we don't want that. So easiest way is to have the OS scale those buffers. So how to do that is we'll go to virtual host ports, properties, edit, and then receive buffer. is set at 65,000 bytes. We're going to go with 0. That forces the OS to scale. And same thing with the send buffer. I'll set that to 0. OS will scale at that rate. And then it will fill up those buffers as needed. So if they have a bad network, it'll scale a little bit bigger as needed, and then scale down as needed. And you do not want to change the read buffer size, because that's what we need to read. And if we have nothing to read, that's bad news. So we just change receive buffer and send buffer and save. And we got through step 4, so we can restart everything. And all changes are into place. So those are 4 basic things that you can do to have your Wowza server running at its best.
Very cool. So Jason, just so for some of those folks out there, obviously, if I'm just getting off the ground, I'm doing a trial, that's going to be one experience, and we're really looking at a 201, someone who's probably already deployed. If let's say I'm an AWS person, I've got an EC2, and I'm vanilla, I use an AMI, I bring my own license, and I get it up and running. Basically what you did is what I should be doing from the get-go. Like from the minute I launched the AMI, I should be making these changes to ensure I'm tuned from day one, versus doing all the testing and being like, what's wrong with this, and where did I go wrong, and there's weeping and gnashing of teeth and crying, and then you run into the weekend and you're frustrated, right? So would you say, like, make this your step 2 after launch?
Yeah, this is step 2 after launch, because this is allows you, if you're going to do like load testing as well, it's going to let you know what your true number is, or what your server can handle. And so, for example, if you don't do that, then we'll just say that, oh, you think your server can only handle 500 playback streams, and then you spend money for another server that's going to cost you a bit more probably, and then you're like, oh wow, I could get 5,000 streams, but I could have probably got that 5,000 playback streams if I just tuned my server in the first place.
Cool. And so the setup to this is, Jason, Rose, Alex, all of you can probably attest, do you see at minimum, we see at least 1 tuning case come in a week, probably way more, but we can all agree that tuning is sometimes the root cause of issues that get submitted to us on a regular basis. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like Rose's head nod says it all.
Yes, for
Very
sure.
emphatic. Cool. No, it's good. And that's, I think for everyone watching, those really aren't difficult. I think maybe the math in the moment is probably the hardest part, but making those changes, even via, we're not asking you to go into an XML file. We're getting everything done via the manager, which is great. But making this part of your checklist and your workflow and your environments will save you a lot of time and possibly future tickets with us. And so that's, for you to be self-sufficient, for you to be able to get on the road and not wait for a response for us for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours or however long. It moves you forward quicker, and time is money, right? We can all agree with that. So Jason, I appreciate your time with this and walking us through this. Justin, I see some questions in there.
Yeah, for sure. So Jason, yes, thank you, and agreed with all points made here, right? Tuning to prevent any potential perceived problems with Wowza is a common thread we see, as Rose said in the forums, as Matt attested to in the inbound ticket queue as well. This teed up a lot of great questions. I see some have been answered. There's a handful that are open. So Jason, if you're good here, thanks again. We'll switch back over to what's going to be our Q&A section now. And then look to answer some of the questions from the participants. Justin, I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Well, I'm just going to go through the list, maybe, and since we have 3 questions that have come in right now, I'm going to go from bottom to top, since the most recent ones related to what Jason was talking about. So Soren was saying bigger heap size could lead to longer garbage collection times and more CPU load on garbage collection. If you have the choice, is it a good idea to go with more servers with a smaller heap or less servers with a larger heap? What basically is the sweet spot for Wowza?
I would say never go more than about a 64 gig heap, because that's a Java limit. And it comes down to testing and your workflow, because sometimes you're going to need a big heap. Like, for example, you have a lot of startup streams, IP cameras that start up at server startup. And what you say, you have a playlist, which is going to be loading up streams as well. You'll need a bigger heap. I would never, probably in a production environment, go less than 10 gig heap. And ideally you can go, 20, 30 gig heap, and that's usually plenty for most workflows.
All right, thank you. I think people always love those more specific recommendations like you're giving right now. Soren's also asking, if I only want WebRTC playback, do I have to leave RTSP/RTP enabled, or since the underlying stream for WebRTC are RTP, or can I disable them all as long as I have WebRTC enabled in the dedicated section?
I'm pretty sure you'll need RTP enabled for playback types as well, because WebRTC is RTP protocol.
Okay,
So
but that being, I think they're asking if they only want WebRTC for playback, though.
Yeah, you still need RTP. WebRTC is a RTP protocol.
So we leave the RTSP as active in the settings that you showed us earlier.
Yeah, it's RTSP/RTP.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you. I hope that does help out there. Hong is asking, is there any detailed example of a build, an example to build a Wowza cluster in real production?
I know for myself personally, I'm not certain that we have anything documented. Rose may know. She lives in our documentation and forums and those conversations, but really with where we are today, there's so much more to that rather than how do I build a cluster. Your workflow is a huge piece of even what that looks like, right? Server size, what are we handling, what are we producing, what are we ingesting, what are we outputting, what's our scaling strategy for should we utilize a CDN, should we not? There's a lot of stuff happening there, and one of the sort of our go-to with a service we launched last year would be to talk this further through with our professional services team. But Rose, if you've got any insight, I would love to hear your wisdom.
Yeah, I did a blog recently with one of our third-party streaming experts, Carol Bowick, and he had some fantastic information and examples on how to test a cluster of servers. So I'm going to drop that blog in the chat, and hopefully that'll give you the information. So I hope you give that a try.
All right, thank you, Rose.
Sure.
And one thing to consider, if you want to give us more detailed information and want to do it maybe a public forum where other people can chime in, help out, from their own experiences, definitely our community forum is a great place to go. And I don't know, Rose, if you want to also add a link there just so people know how to get directed. So Daniel Root asks, do the default options follow the tuning recommendations that you just showed?
No, they don't. We have where it will optimize a little bit, but to fully tune, you're going to have to manually do that.
So Daniel, definitely follow our recommendations as opposed to leave them as default. I think that's kind of the whole point here, right? I mean, definitely our defaults are good, but not in all situations.
And we'll be posting a link to the tuning guide as well, which I think Jason covers a lot of what you went through today as well.
Now, Clint has a very long question here, so please feel free to read it from the Q&A, or I can read it aloud here. But the number of cameras is constantly growing, but we maintain an average of 75 cameras across each Wowza Streaming Engine. So in reference to what Mac was saying, yes, 1,000 is way too many for just one instance. We have built an application to manage all of these cameras, which has integration with Wowza API for things like migrating a camera from one Wowza engine to another and keeping downstream systems in sync with the correct URLs for each camera. These cameras feed in-house development walls, traffic, websites, mobile apps, etc. The majority of our overhead appears to happen in the process of generating still images. I'm looking for the question in this. We use NGINX instances at the perimeter for caching content. JMeter has come in handy for understanding our capacity, along with Elasticstack for analysts of the logs from caching nodes and Wowza. One. Okay, it looks like you ended. Okay. So are these, I'm sorry, Clint, are these questions or what are you trying to? Okay.
I think
no,
I think it was, I think it was a setup for, he was asking if there's plans to adapt the transcoder and an engine to use GPU for grabbing stills versus CPU. Jason, I know with the discussion with our codec change, do you foresee any improvements to that at the CPU level? Is that something we have enough information?
There could be a little bit of savings there. With we have Beamer libraries now with starting with Wowza Streaming Engine 4.8.11, which could potentially have a little bit of a CPU savings and higher quality output.
But to be certain, we don't have anything that we're aware of at this point to utilize GPU resources to offload that to
offload now. It is, unfortunately, at this time, it's default, which is the CPU.
Clint, we can look, but can you just type in and just let us know whether or not we submitted a feature request on your behalf for that? And we'll follow up on that.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate your questions, Clint. And he says that you did not, but Clint, I mean, you've obviously opened up a ticket, and support is right here. So they will definitely be with you regarding your questions directly, but we do appreciate you asking them. Jesse Williams asks, I have about 5 PCs producing video across the local net. Most of the time, I can only see 3 out of 5 videos at one time. Would that be tuning or resource allocation?
Unfortunately, that might be a guessing game, and I would recommend opening up a support ticket within the portal, and we could track down what that is. Because it could be, for example, if you see 3 out of 5, that means maybe 2 of the sources aren't working, and it has nothing to do with the Wowza servers. Or potentially it could be a playback side as well. So it's hard to know without troubleshooting.
For sure. And sometimes on these internal workflows like this too, Jason, we do see sometimes there's very special DMZ things happening. It depends on your organization. Typically we'll see government type organizations where they've got a very DMZs and subnets are happening, or they'll use ranges, or different things will happen, and it could be all the way down to the network level. And so it's having that conversation that beyond just your configuration and what you're trying to accomplish would probably be very beneficial there as well. So definitely we've seen that before. So
all right. And Jesse, thanks for your question. I see that you work for the government and that you will open a ticket, so definitely appreciate that. Jonathan's asking, they have an IPTV system and they're using Wowza already on a 40 camera system, making the RTP streams available to a large IPTV multicast network, about 300 players. And they want to expand their system to be 200 cameras. So they need to know a little more about what CPU/RAM resources are impacted, and how can they properly, basically they need to know how to scale the system.
Well, one thing is still going to involve testing, because there's a lot of variables like incoming bit rates. It's going to amend the codecs and a lot of factors like that. So testing is key. What I do recommend is probably not going about 100 of those cameras per server, regardless of the specs, because with network issues and things outside of your control, it can cause havoc. So it's best to not overload a single server.
And it's important too. I mean, a multicast is a different beast than
Lots of
whether,
throttling.
yeah, I'm trying to think. It depends on the player, but if multicast versus HTTP versus even like if they could do an RTSP or an RTP option, it's a different, it's a different method. So different resource requirements. So and probably harder. Jason, can you? I don't know that we've attempted a J meter or some element of load testing with multicasting.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, usually the load testing would be with the HTTP protocol.
Yeah. So it's a unique workflow. Definitely not what we would consider normal vanilla everyday stuff. So it would require some time to work through that with you.
So generally speaking, Mac, you'd recommend they open a ticket?
For sure. And
So
that way, yeah, definitely we can get eyes on it and get a feel for the full workflow, ask all the right questions, and as needed, we have resources tied into the development team for anything that that we need to know, maybe at a code level, to know what's available to them. So we can push it forward.
And then you can also get more information on basically what their system is capable of to begin with.
Right.
Okay, moving on. One question that came in is there any plan to have CloudFront as a stream target?
That's a product question. And product is not represented here today.
That is definitely a good point. So Hong, just to reiterate what Mac is saying, that's really a question for our product managers, and we will be having very soon a webinar on those things where you could ask that question if you wanted to, certainly to our product managers.
But I will say this is support focused, and so I think it's really important that everyone on this call, on this webinar, understands that we're here to advocate for you. We're here to express your voice and to pass that along to the product teams, to the development teams, and that's a big piece of what we do. And so while we like to do break fix and get you back to success, your voice is heard, and it's important, as Rob expressed it very early on about the portal, the FAQ portal, the seeing your tickets in the portal. That's because of things you've been asking for, and we do listen. We can't always develop at the speed of sound as quickly as we would like to, but we hear you. And as being the frontline team here, from a support standpoint, we take that very seriously. So what I would say to you is send in, if you have a feature request, nothing's broken, but if you have a feature request or a suggestion, send them to us. And we're happy to pass that along, and we'll let you know what action we've taken. So we've either logged a bug or we've logged a feature request. We've let product and development know. You may get a response from us that says it hasn't been vetted. There's no timeline, but getting your idea in and your voice heard, that's the way to do that for now. So if you have questions about that, feel free to let me know, but that's what we're here to do. Okay.
And Justin, I just want to share really quickly, we do have Wowza documentation on how to integrate a streaming engine EC2 instant with CloudFront. It's not a specific stream target workflow, but I will share the link to that doc in the chat for everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Urs. Thank you, Mac.
Just to add, Auntie in the chat or in the Q&A did mention that CloudFront is a pull-based CDN. So you basically just set up an HTTP origin application in Wowza Engine, and it's going to pull your HLS stream or whatever. So it's available, that integration. It's just not a stream target. And I'm not sure if CloudFront accepts a push. I've always seen it done with the pull.
I believe our videos on wowza.com actually use CloudFront. But as I did not install our Wowza Streaming Engine instance that is managing everything, I defer to you for more details on those. Christian is asking, is deploying Wowza Streaming Engine in a Docker container a common technique for running Wowza instances?
Not in production. It's not common. It's done, but
it's become Go
A
ahead.
lot of customers will use it for like testing environments. For production, when we do see it, it's like doing like a couple streams and that's it. Spin something up, dispose of it, and then get another container together when needed.
Right. So to Jason's point, you're talking more about something that's event based, something up and down. It's not something where you would spin up an instance and expect to have, say, 20 different sources coming in and feeding out a bunch of people. It's not it currently is not a robust solution, but it meets a need, a very specific need in what they do. And so, even for an example, within Wowza Streaming Cloud, we do use containers, and so it is very doable. But again, even in our architecture, it's a one-to-one scenario. You're giving us one signal or one source in, and we're using the CDN to carry the load. Or even if we're pushing to something custom, it's very light. And so it's just a matter of using that image, that VM with whatever the configuration of CPU, cores, and memory is, right? And we've already got that tuned and set, but we're not expecting a big load, right? And so that's how we utilize that. And it's and depending on what your workflow and needs are, the same. But I wouldn't, Alex, to your point, it's not like we're going to be rolling up these really large GPU instances trying to handle this ongoing 24/7. You're running months at a time. That's not the idea, right? Containerization is really going to be something that's quick. It's a burst. It's something you need now. It's gone tomorrow.
It's really a different ideology, right? So either have a 36 core server with 256 gigs RAM, and you have 200 incoming streams, blah blah blah, or you have 200 containers with Wowza. So then think about licensing on that. Right. You have 200 containers with Wowza running simultaneously. You are, that's much more expensive to run potentially than one big server with one Wowza license. And that's something you have to consider as well. So that's why most of the time in support, what I see is larger servers with a bunch of applications, and different applications are configured differently for different uses.
It's definitely a philosophy, and it's definitely cost and what your overall workflow is. So not a great answer to should you do it today? I don't know. We could help you. We could maybe help you to decide, or give you some information to help you decide. But it definitely is going to come down to creating, and to Rose's point, testing. So good stuff.
All right. Well, we have one more question coming in, and I think that'll about do it. Before I ask this question, I'm going to put up our last poll. And our poll is basically just asking, would you attend a Wowza Streaming Engine 301 expert level support webinar? We'd love to know if you guys have enjoyed this webinar, has it been helpful to you, and whether you would like to see more webinars like this. So with that, I will answer the last question, or rather I won't answer it, but maybe Mac will. If I have the latest version of Wowza Streaming Engine and transcoder, is it possible to support low latency players without a low latency encoder?
So that statement about low latency encoder, low latency really is the way you encode a stream. So for example, we recommend encoding a source stream with like a 1 second keyframe interval or 2 second. And if you want to go low latency, then you can go even lower than that.
Bruce clarified for low latency HLS just now.
Oh,
okay. So with low latency HLS, it's a good idea on the encoder side to have because some encoders will have like a 3 second buffer. So we can't change that on our side. So if it's gonna buffer for 3 seconds, you have to add that on top. And if there's a possibility where you can put it to 0 latency, that means no buffer, and then it speeds up your latency time.
Right.
Justin, I think this question raises a really important point that we should go over really quickly. And that is, as far as being on the most recent version of Streaming Engine, that is the most important thing you can do to successfully stream through Wowza. And just yesterday, we released 4.812. And every single engine release has a significant number of new features and bug fixes. So I will link to the release notes for Streaming Engine, but I just want to say quickly that I know for a lot of customers, it can kind of be scary to upgrade in case something breaks in production. So what we recommend that you do is you can reach out to Wowza customer success team and you can request a testing license. And so you can kind of set everything up and upgrade in the testing license and not have anything be affected in production. You can also reach out and create a support ticket if you want us to overview your upgrade and just make sure that everything will work just as well as it did in the older version. But there's a lot of security vulnerabilities that you could avoid. There's a lot of new fixes for WebRTC, LLHLS. Again, just yesterday, I think we had 16 fixes in the Streaming Engine. So it's really important that you try and get on the most recent version.
All right. And I just want to also mention with low latency HLS, I mean, it is an ecosystem, right? You have to consider whether the player can handle it and whether the content delivery network can handle it. So not just us. All right. Well, hey, thank you, everybody. If we could just jump to the last slide there. I want to thank you all for your time coming here. If you do have support questions and want to open a ticket, please do go to wowza.com/support and well, open a ticket. It's the best way we can help you because we can get all your information, more details about what the problem is and what your functionality is available to you with all your equipment. For those of you who are interested in looking at some of our other products, do contact our sales support. And if you want to check out our pricing plans, just go to wowza.com/pricing. So thank you, Rose. Thank you, Jason, Alex, Rob, Mac, for being on this webinar. We really appreciate you attending and giving all this great information out. We do hope you'll be around for a 301 webinar in the future. That would be great. Other than that, thank you all once again for coming and have a great day.